All right, everybody. Hey, this is Mr. Harvey. It's Wednesday, about 7:50, and I am going to start my first of a series of lectures on Chapter 7. So let's get right into it. Okay, Chapter 7 is about a couple things. Number one, we're going to talk about the old society, and I talked about that on Tuesday. The old society, about the Ancien Regime, the old regime of what life in Europe was like before the French Revolution, before pre-revolutionary, and this is pre-revolutionary Europe. French Revolution, the revolutions of 1848, the revolutions of 1830, which we're going to be talking about in second semester. Okay, this is we've discussed a lot of this, so I'm going to fly through this, and this is a term that refers to politically, economically, socially pre-revolutionary Europe. Okay, um, how was that ancient regime, the old regime, characterized? By a hierarchical society. You had different social classes. That's going to change a lot in the industrial and agricultural revolutions. We're going to see different classes, like the working class, the factory class. There's not going to be as many rural peasantries. There's going to be a poor working class that works in the factories. Okay. Um, and I'm going to fly through this because we've talked about this already. Okay, remember the importance of tradition in this ancient regime, but also in Europe as a whole. Remember the importance of tradition intellectually, right? Geocentrism versus heliocentrism. We're going to see the importance of tradition when it came to social, political, economic norms. Okay, and we discussed that both the peasants and nobles repeatedly called for the restoration of their traditional rights. All right. We also talked about in the Ancien Regime about two of the most prominent social classes: the aristocracy, the wealthy, least populous social class in Europe. Okay. And we talked about the different types of aristocracy: the British, smallest but most socially responsible. And we're going to see how Britain in the 19th century, in the 1800s, they're not going to have any of these revolutions. Okay, the 19th century, 1800s, they're not going to be going through revolutions. Why? Because they're aristocracy, people in power, people in charge. They're going to solve problems through legislation. Okay, the British nobility solved their problems, so they didn't have future problems. Okay, French, no, 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 no. And remember, the French, a large nobility, they're gonna completely take advantage of uh, kind of context in France. They are going to really take advantage of the peasants, and that's going to backfire in 1789. Later, nobles, Eastern nobles, just rude, straight up over the serfs, not cool. And you should know the different nobles and the powers that they had in Eastern Europe. Okay, you should all be well aware of that. We talked about this. Okay, Junkers, Boyars. I'm not even going to try to say the Polish nobles, um, but just know that the Eastern European nobles, they had control, and they had control over those serfs. Okay. Yeah. All right. Peasants, know that they were very poor. Farmers, land was their economic basis. All right. They typically rented and worked the land owned by the nobles. And we're talking, remember, prior to the Industrial Revolution. This is prior to the revolutions, the French Revolution and the Agricultural Revolution. Okay. Very vulnerable. They got exploited. They were very, very, very much dependent upon the nobles, and the nobles are going to take advantage of that. Okay, and you should be able to list definitely on your AP test some of the ways that they were taken advantage of. Banalities, those feudal dues for the French peasants. I just literally combined those words into pench. The corvée, Habsburg serfs, near slavery. You should know some of the context surrounding the serfs. No, Maria Theresa. What did Joseph do? Then what did Leopold do? Okay. No, robot that they had to they had compulsory services. The Lord needed them to do work. They did it. They did it for free. And Russian serfs, it sucked for them. Note an interesting part about the Ottoman Empire, and that there, since there was a labor shortage, peasants had some influence. Peasants had some negotiating capital, and they were actually more free than the peasants and serfs of Europe. Go figure. Um, Aristocracy, awesome. All right, English game laws. You should know that this is probably the best example, and if you were to write an SAQ, that this is the best example of the aristocracy manipulating the law to their benefit. They had the exclusive legal right to hunt game on land. Uh, Ironic because they did not let peasants do that, who typically hunted for food, which you need to live. Kind of ridiculous. Um, and they will manipulate the law to benefit them, and that is and that illustrates how the aristocracy manipulated government and manipulated the system and institutions for their own benefit, while letting the poor suffer and peasants suffer. Okay, peasant rebellions. The best example is, and we see peasant rebellions, and you should be familiar of where we see peasant rebellions and where we don't. Well, we see them in Eastern Europe. Why? Because the peasants' life sucks out there. It sucks in Western Europe, but not as bad as Eastern Europe. And we know this because they were in Eastern Europe. They were pretty much slaves. And so the Pugachev Rebellion, you should know what monarch that was under and what some of the implications and effects of that. Right? Catherine, Charter of Nobility, freaked her out. And so she's going to give the nobles way more power after Pugachev's rebellion. Okay, we see other revolts in Eastern Europe, and you should know, why is this happening in Eastern Europe as opposed to Western? Well, because the conditions were way worse in Eastern Europe, and we should be able to explain why. Okay, and there's Pugachev. Bam. All right, I'm gonna stop, and I'm gonna throw up the next lecture right now. So that was part one, just a quick review of what we discussed last week, and part two is coming right up. Bye.